fighting for playoff positioning, but it is the Purple Kingdom here this week, and here comes the red, the white, and the blue, and Rex Ryan as well as Tyrod Taylor, Ed Reed, and Corey Graham, and a whole bunch of other guys with them. The Ravens Super Bowl jewelry. Adam Bonini is the sports director and anchor for WGRZ in Buffalo, where I love those wings and always have a good time in Orchard Park, but they're bringing it down here this week. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Adam Bonini. That's BENIGNI. And we welcome him back onto the program. What's up, Adam? Happy football season to you.
Hey, Nestor. Yeah, happy New Year, so to speak, to you, my friend.
It's football season in Western New York and as well as in Baltimore. And look, I said this week, and I don't want to be disrespectful. I like Rex. I did radio with Rex and still love Rex, quite frankly. Sends some notes my way from time to time. I would say if the Ravens lose to the Bills at home this week, it's going to be a rough year for the Ravens. I see the Bills as a diminished team and a team that's really had a rough offseason.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. I mean, when you talk about the fact, and I'm not even going to list all of the issues they've had, but I'll just give you the headliners in case there might be those of your listeners who might not be familiar. When you draft a guy in Shaq Lawson, we're talking about defense here. Their defense fell from 4th ranked overall in the league to 19th on Rex's watch in his first year as head coach at Buffalo last year. So they go up, pass rush was a major issue. They go out and get Shaq Lawson from Clemson. He was flagged with a shoulder issue. He couldn't even make it through rookie camp before they decided for him to have surgery. So he's going to be out, 6 to 8 weeks into the year. So there's your top pick. Then Reggie Ragland, linebacker from Alabama, the guy who they were going to groom to call the defense, the nucleus of the defense, to build the thing around. They said they would have drafted him in the first round. As it was, they traded up in the second to get him. And he goes down with an ACL injury in training camp. So you've got the top 2 picks not on the field to start the year. And, oh, by the way, you have your best defensive lineman, Marcel Darius, who last year they just signed to a $100 million contract. 4-game suspension, second substance abuse violation. He's in rehab, and a host of other injuries they dealt with during the course of the preseason. So, yeah, diminished, tough offseason. I would say that is an understatement. And we'll see. We hear a lot of talk here about Rex and this defense and the communication being much better and everyone being on the same page. And, last year with Mario Williams, who's now in Miami, not being able to get after the quarterback, to use his terms, and they were kind of baffled and there was friction about the approach. Rex claims the communication is so much better this year that everyone is on the same page. We'll really begin to find out on Sunday in Baltimore.
Well, certainly the fans bought in last year pretty quickly, and Rex is great at recruiting the fans and recruiting Jim Kelly and recruiting all of the legends of Bill's years past. But then you got to have the players, and they've selected Tyrod Taylor, who we liked immensely here as a person. Didn't know much about him as a player, quite frankly. He didn't play much beyond running around in the preseason, and Joe Flacco thankfully stayed upright for long stretches of time. It was a nice campaign for Tyrod, and we saw him after the Pro Bowl out in San Francisco. He stopped by and visited, and it's amazing how quickly he's become the person that you're going to have to talk about there. If he goes well, they're going to go well. If he doesn't go well, it's going to be a rough year in Buffalo.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, and there are significant questions about Tyrod Taylor. Me personally, I think the glass is way more than half full with him. I really liked a lot of what I saw last year in his first full year as an NFL starter. They went out and, there was no way they're going to let him go into this season making $3 million a year as an established starter. In the leadership role that he's blossomed into on this team is a significant aspect to consider when you look at the Bills moving forward. But they signed him to a 6-year extension. But bear in mind, this was reported at the time, and the way they structured this thing, it really makes sense. They can get out very inexpensively after both years 1 and year 2. And Tyrod Taylor has to make the all-important next step. He's mobile. He's exciting. You guys know this. He needs to make better decisions late in games, deliver in the fourth quarter more consistently, more effectively. Has to do a much better job of work in the middle of the field. And quite frankly, they didn't win when he needed to throw 30 times or more last year. And it's a run-based offense. They're talking about making it more balanced this year. But the bottom line is they need to be able to win on the strength of his arm And they were not able to do that last year. So he still has a lot to prove, but I'll say this. I've been here in Buffalo for all 16 of the non-playoff years. The biggest reason behind that, as it would be for most franchises, is the lack of an established franchise quarterback, which you, of course, have had the luxury of having down there in Baltimore.
And we lived with that one for a long time. I mean, Brian Billick's my business partner here because he didn't have a franchise quarterback. I mean, that's how you lose your job. And if Tyrod's not a franchise quarterback, Rex Ryan's probably not going to be the coach of the Bills long.
But I think he's the closest thing they've had to it, Nestor. I really do. On the field and off the field, more importantly on the field. And again, I think he benefited from his time in Baltimore behind Flacco. I think we saw some of that benefit last year in what he was able to do. Now, in the areas I've already mentioned, he needs to take the next step. And there's every indication he's looked very solid to me in the preseason. You can only read so much into it. You need to see him obviously do it in regular season games. But he's such a huge storyline for both teams this week, obviously, as you look at his return to Baltimore and going against the guy he worked behind. So I'm very optimistic about Taylor. I'm cautiously optimistic. He needs to take that next step for them to be successful, though.
He is Adam Benini, sports director and anchor at WGRZ in Buffalo, and the Bills coming out from Western New York down here for some crab cakes. Bring me some wings when you come in if you do that for me. Who's their best player? I mean, I've talked to several people in Buffalo, and Richie Incognito's name came up as being a guy that, Rex sort of went out on the plank and was, hiring guys in New York that punched out his former starting quarterback the next day. I mean, Rex isn't allergic to any of those types of problems or problem children. Neither was his father during that period of time. But Incognito was persona non grata in most places. Rex brought him in, and some folks have said that he might have been their best player last year.
Well, he's one of their best players, and he's probably the best story, where they brought him in on a one-year deal, and the guy winds up in the Pro Bowl, coming off the whole bullying scandal in Miami, and he not only is he extremely effective on the offensive line, they went ahead and signed him to a 3-year deal. They wanted to keep that offensive line together because they did lead the league in rushing last year, and he's been a key part of that. But I mean, not only has he put that all behind him, he's really become a leader in the locker room and set a great example for others. He's one of the great reclamation stories in the NFL, no question about it. He's a very, very good player, Nestor, and a very important part of the team. You asked me who's their best player. I'm going to say Sammy Watkins, at receiver. This guy is an incredible athlete. He has dealt with keeping him healthy has been an issue. Also, they struggled. He and Tyrod Taylor, I think, struggled to form. There were trust issues there last year, and at times Sammy came out and actually called for the ball, and it became a controversy here. But when he was healthy, I mean, he is an absolutely dynamic threat. And he'll go up. He's one of those receivers, and you see him around the league. But he's one of the guys who, when he's covered, he's still open. You know what I mean? You put the, he'll go up and get it. Can he stay healthy? He had off-season foot surgery, had a fracture in his foot, was limited in training camp. Every indication that he's healthy. And again, availability has been a problem with him. He's dealt with nagging type of injuries that have slowed him down to this point. High first-round pick. They've slowed him down to this point in his career. But and I don't think they have a lot behind him at the receiver position. It's a concern for me. But if Sammy Watkins is healthy on the field, he is a big-time threat, and he is their best offensive player to me, hands down.
Well, losing the 2 draft picks as well as their best player that they inked to a $100 million deal, tell me about what's left in that defense. Certainly Kyle Williams feels like he's been there almost as long as you, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kyle Williams, a former 5th-round pick, Pro Bowl-type guy, I mean, he is terrific. You got their 3rd-round pick, Adolphus Washington, who they've been fairly happy with. They did have some depth. Corbin Bryant, a guy who's played well for them. Jerry Hughes, linebacker, watch for him. I'm sure Flacco is going to be aware of where he is at all times on Sunday. They had some veteran depth where they're able to go out. Zach Brown they picked up. Manny Lawson, a veteran who many figured with Shaq Lawson out, this guy Manny Lawson, they had felt a veteran guy, felt that he was going to step up. They wound up cutting him. He had an NFL investigation going on, potential possible violation of the personal conduct policy, and in a surprise move, they cut him. They bumped up a guy named Lorenzo Alexander, a linebacker, as well. Preston Brown is the guy in the middle who's going to be calling that defense. Struggled in that role last year in terms of the communication. Again, he's the guy they insist it's much better centered around him. Again, all these questions that have to be answered as they get into the season starting Sunday. Defensive back Stephon Gilmore, playing out the final year of his deal. Very, very good cornerback. And opposite him, a guy named Ronald Darby. At safety, and, of course, they got Ed Reed here working with the safeties as well. But just news today, safety Aaron Williams, who suffered a neck injury last year against the Patriots earlier in the year, he was able to go full go in practice today, had been in concussion protocol. So that's a positive sign. They are getting a bit healthier. So they do have players there, but without the 2 draft picks, and that's more of a long-term issue in my mind. I mean, they're going to be functional, I think, on that side of the ball. But without Shaq Lawson and Reggie Ragland, Ragland for the whole season with the torn ACL, Lawson with the labrum, the shoulder injury, and surgery probably till week 6 or 8 or somewhere in there when he would come back. I think that changes the complexion of the long-term development of that defense, certainly. I mean, they'll essentially both be rookies next year when they take the field as opposed to have had 1 year under their belt. So, Brandon Spikes is another guy who they'll have in there for depth, but the depth is a concern, and they're going to rely on a rotation, and the injuries and the suspension to Darius obviously takes a major toll.
Thoughts about Ed Reed and where he is in all this and coming here? It's fascinating. I mean, I saw the beginning and the end and all of his career here. Certainly at the end, he became a leader of men under Harbaugh and became a real mentor to many, many young guys around. Spent a large section of the Billick era wanting his locker around the corner and not wanting to have to do much with anybody. I find it fascinating that he wants to live in Buffalo, coach in Buffalo, and do what coaches have to do, but which he knows very well, which is stay up late and get up early. And that's going to be an interesting transition for him, I think, as a person this year.
So far, by all indications, it's gone very well. And this is a guy that Rex Ryan ID'd as someone who he felt would be a terrific coach. And what he gives you is, you got Rex here. You got his brother Rob as assistant head coach in charge of defense. You got Dennis Thurman, the defensive coordinator, who's got background as a defensive back. I mean, so you've got Reed specifically. He gives you that respect. I mean, the respect that the players have for him. And you can see it during the portions of practice we are able to watch, and having, you work through the off season and you kind of are around these guys. And we've only had a chance to really talk to Ed Reed a couple of times, but you get the sense that when Ed Reed talks, players listen. And I think when you add that dimension of what he was able to accomplish as a player, and you have that around, in addition to all the other coaching depth they have. I mean, there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen, but I think he's been a positive. Again, we'll see how it translates onto the field, but there's every indication that Ed Reed has been a nice addition to this coaching staff here.
Adam Bonini, sports director and anchor at WGRZ in Buffalo. The Bills coming in to take on the Ravens. All right, last thing for you. I mean, what's the over-under here? Bills going to win 10 games? Are they capable of making the playoffs this year?
No, I don't think so. I think, I mentioned the concern at the receiver position. I think Tyrod, like I said, I'm positive on him. But, can Sammy Watkins get through an entire season healthy? Major question mark. Can LaShawn McCoy get through an entire season healthy? Major question mark there. I question the depth they have at the receiver position. Can the offensive line stay healthy? The line was a positive, but, I mean, a guy like Chantrell Henderson, coming back from Crohn's disease and surgery for that. Cordy Glenn, their left tackle, has been dealing with an ankle problem. He was back full in practice today. But there are questions on that side of the ball, and I think there are a lot of questions defensively. I just feel like, Rex talks about this scheme being they fell off with so much talent last year, fell off just a cliff in terms of their effectiveness. And Rex has given it a lot of lip service, You need to see those words turn into action. We'll see. I don't think they're a more talented defense in terms of who they have on the field at this particular point, especially given all the factors we mentioned than they were last year. They might be more effective in the scheme. Let's see how it plays out for real starting on Sunday.
Hey, we'll see the Bills on Sunday. Adam, I really appreciate the visit and the time. Thanks for coming on with us, pal.
No problem, Nestor. Love your town. I spent a lot of time there over the years.
Well, I mean, we're fine town despite what they said about us during the riots,
No,
and at some point, the baseball fans will come back, I'm sure. Hey, man.
All right, man. Have a good one, and we'll see you down there on Sunday.
Oh, I hope so, man. Adam Benini, sports director and anchor at WGRZ in Buffalo. And I'm going to shuffle off right now. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear anywhere you are. Our morning newspaper hits your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That is powered up by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month, and getting you in shape here, even though the bikini season's behind, but got to get in tailgating shape, for crying out loud. Last but not least, breaking news as it happens. Roster moves for the Orioles, for the Ravens. Come to you first on the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis will be here driving you home from 3 until 5. And the SSV on WNST heard every Thursday from 3 until 5, getting us ready for the season as well as for a weekend of Orioles baseball. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.